The Notes app on my phone, I think, has three main purposes, three main functions. Number one, passwords. Number two, ambitious to-do lists that I know full well I will never complete. And three, bad poetry. Poetry I wrote at 3 o'clock in the morning. Like, have you ever had a situationship mess you up so badly they have you writing poetry? Have you ever been so down bad for someone they have you in your Notes app because guilty as charged? And then you like go onto your phone in the cold light of day just looking for a shopping list or something, and suddenly you're confronted by the most depressing thing you've ever read, and to make things worse, you wrote it! I hope this is a common experience and not something that just happens to me, because this happens with surprising regularity for me. Today I want to talk about Notes app poetry. Think Tumblr poetry, TikTok slideshows, Rupi Kaur, Gabbi, hanna, why I think this style is so popular, why it resonates with people, why it works, and also when it doesn't work. Because we're seeing this being published more and more regularly. This is Pretty Boys Are Poisonous by Megan Fox. I actually think this is a great title, but as I was reading through it, I kept saying to myself, like, this really feels like something you would write in the Notes app and then maybe not publish, but here it is. There are some interesting poems in here though. There is like this strong motif of Greek mythology kind of peppered through the work, and a lot of the poems also feel very autobiographical. We find out a lot about Megan Fox's life, from domestic abuse to a miscarriage. It's a very honest and vulnerable collection, and I'm intrigued by why a person so famous would choose to express themselves through the medium of poetry. Specifically, something I would say resembles Notes app poetry. So what do I mean by that? I think that Notes app poetry kind of comes in one of two forms. There are two kind of distinct categories. The first is this: a sentence that is just broken up by line breaks. Like, split any sentence ever into 3 or 4 parts and it will roughly look like a poem. Yesterday I went to the shop to buy mangoes. Yesterday I went to the shop and bought mangoes. You see what I mean? Especially, this is such a staple of this kind of poetry where they just like break up the final word letter by letter. And this form is often used to share kind of like human truths, universal truths about love or loss or longing or grief, heartbreak, tragedy, yearning, those kinds of emotions that are very big and heavy and weighty and profound. And these poems seek to simplify those big, scary ideas in words that basically anyone can understand. And so often it will be this kind of like profound sentence broken up by line breaks. You know, there's no structure here necessarily. So I guess to go all like English lit student on you, this would come under the category of free verse, which basically just means that it doesn't follow a structure or rhythm with rhyme. There's no meter, so there's no like technical skills being used here, but it's still essentially a poem. So it has an open form. There is no fixed form here. So a way someone might use this to discuss something big and put it into simpler terms would be like, grief is love persevering, but with nowhere to go, right? That's a sentence. And it seeks to understand the concept of grief and what it is, but then you break it up like this. Grief is love persevering, but with nowhere to go. Do you see what I mean? It helps. I think the cursive voice really adds to the overall effect. The other category is a tad more literary, I would say, because it draws on similes, metaphors, analogies. We'll basically take like an extended metaphor and again speak about some kind of universal truth or an emotion that resonates with the reader. So here's what I wrote. Like literally 5 minutes before filming this video, I was like, I guess I should have some examples. So I just wrote this down straight off the top of the dome. Bear in mind, this would have been better if I'd written it at 3 AM. I feel like Notes app poetry and the 10 AM, like they don't work properly. So anyway, this is what I wrote. Today I went to the bathroom to find only 1 toothbrush in a glass made for 2. Now toothpaste flecks on the mirror, minty white residue are all I have left to remind me of you. It's so stupid. It did rhyme though. Maybe I kind of snapped with that. Rupi Kaur, pack it up. We'll get to Rupi Kaur. Anyway, this is my point. Ambiguous enough that hopefully lots of different people could relate to it, because it basically is a poem about loneliness, about You know, we use this solitary toothbrush as a symbol for a person's aloneness in a space that used to be cohabitated, suddenly feeling solitary in a space that was once shared. And so this could be a mother whose son has gone off to university, a person whose partner has left them, a person whose partner has died. And I think that's the trick, is to make it kind of vague enough that lots of different people can relate to what you're talking about. Notes app poetry will often be addressed to a you, like an unspecified other, and written from the first person perspective. So it will come from the perspective of I, from me, from myself. And I think that gives it this kind of universal appeal. It's kind of this like everyman figure where you and I could be anyone, you know, by not using specific names or not saying my mother, my son, my girlfriend, my boyfriend, my best friend, you know, by not using those words, we can create what is essentially mass market appeal. And that's why that weird, stupid toothbrush parody poem that I wrote could resonate with multiple people in multiple scenarios, because it is intentionally a little bit ambiguous. Lots of different people could position themselves as the I in that situation. And I think it also, the reason it works, the reason it catches a lot of people's attention is because just using an ambiguous you encourages us to think, who is the you for me? Who am I thinking about when I read this? Who does this bring to mind? And I think the place we first saw this really blow up on a wide scale was Tumblr. Popular themes in notes app poetry, Tumblr poetry will often be like the softness and the tenderness of the human heart. The idea of this delicate organ being juxtaposed with something brutal and violent and harsh. You know, when we say like my heart is broken, we're taking the concept of something so soft and delicate and vulnerable and then juxtaposing it with the term break. You know, we say heart shattering, gut wrenching. We're taking soft things and harming them, and that brings you like a visual cue. Other imagery that I think is really popular in these mediums will be like water or sand, you know, slipping between your fingers, the earth, human anatomy, especially the eyes or like parts of the face, or hands as well, fingers. The weather is often invoked, so like the rain versus the sunshine, thunder, storms, cloudy days, you know, used as essentially pathetic fallacy, I guess. Like the weather represents emotions. The concept of midnight or dusk, dawn, light and dark. There'll be references to the natural world, to trees, arms and veins. You'll often find people naming very specific species of flowers. You know, like it'll reference peonies or something. Definitely reference to the lungs and the air that we breathe, someone being your oxygen. There'll be reference to the moon, the sun, the stars. And the other thing you'll always find is lots of oxymorons, things like beautiful tragedy, exquisite death, delicious venom. And these are all tools to basically, yeah, evoke a lot of emotion. They're things that everyone kind of understands. Again, we are talking about universal appeal here. And like I said, these really became popular on Tumblr back in the day. Now, if you were raised by tumblr.com, you are definitely in therapy now. We're all in this together, you guys. We are the Tumblr generation. And I will say, you can definitely tell that Taylor Swift, for example, was a Tumblr girly. Like her style of songwriting, her lyricism, it really echoes all of those themes that you would find on Tumblr. Playing with language in a very, very specific way. Like the lyric, "Darling, I'm a nightmare dressed like a daydream," is Tumblr fodder. That, I would reblog that over the top of a picture of like sunlight coming through expensive bottled water. Like, Tumblr had me in a freaking chokehold, I swear to God. My Tumblr feed was my pride and joy. Any picture of Lana Del Rey wearing those hot sunglasses, reblog. Yeah, like a 12-pound bottle of Voss water that came in a reusable bottle, reblog. An Arctic Monkeys lyric from the album AM with like a picture of someone's knee socks in black and white, reblog. Or like a silhouette of two hands reaching for each other, freaking blog. That stuff will keep me up at night. Here are some examples of Tumblr poetry that I could find just like from a quick Google search. "The space in my arms was free. You gave yourself willingly, so kind and warm and friendly. I could crush you, bruise you, drop you, lose you, wring you out till you're empty. God, what a beautiful gift to hold your heart like this and know that you would let me." We have this one. "My aesthetic is the glow in the rim of your iris, a solar eclipse peeking behind the pupil of your eye, and the mountainous curves in between your knuckles, like Tetris blocks between my fingertips. Your body is a forest fire, raging through the trees that are my veins, and I long to bathe in your heat. I long for the hours that I soak in your view, as if I was the beauty of the ocean, and you were the rain showering over me, as if I was truly the water. I absorbed every piece of you, you became me, and I became you. So straight away in those poems you can see pretty much all of the things that I'm talking about. You know, the iris, the veins, holding someone's heart between your fingers. There's a little bit of a formula to it, or like a criteria, I guess, for what makes like a Tumblr poem. And you know what? If you're feeling inspired right now and you feel like you want to write your own poetry and share it with the world, maybe you should start a website. And I'm actually excited to let you know that today's video is very kindly brought to you by Squarespace. And Squarespace is the all-in-one platform for building a website or an online brand. And the best news is you don't need any coding experience or web design expertise. You can use their range of incredible templates to customize and bring your vision to life. Making a website now could not be easier. You can also use tools to create a mailing list, to create a blog, so that's 2 new ways to connect with your audience. There are also analytical tools so you can see what's working well, you know, what poems are people coming back to again and again. And if this all sounds good to you, you can actually head to squarespace.com right now for a free trial and use the code jackedwards at squarespace.com/jackedwards to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. You're welcome. So thank you so much to Squarespace for working with me on this video. Now, here's what I'll say. Tumblr poetry walked so that TikTok slideshows could run. TikTok slideshows, I think, are the closest thing we have to exist right now to Tumblr. So like the Tumblr glory days, you know, the energy, the aesthetic, these very pretty, aesthetically pleasing pictures alongside the most heart-wrenching, soul-destroying words you will ever read in your entire life. And you know what? I am obsessed with it. It'll be like the instrumental of a Phoebe Bridgers song where you flick through these devastating poems, these heartbreaking words, and I eat it up every single time. And I leave no crumbs. I'm licking the plate clean. It's a full 12-course dinner for me. I love it. It will be like, ooh, you know, like from Scott Street. And actually recently there's been this trend on TikTok of people sharing their tragic kind of notes app poetry. And honestly, it's so funny to me because so many of them just really don't make any sense. My lungs are rejecting the water that fills them. I will drown before I ever learn to swim. We also have I am rage, pretending to be sleeping in a corner of a room, hoping you bare your belly to the light. It's essentially these weird like fragments of sentences that think they're giving Lord Byron, but they're just sort of giving Lord Tyron. I'm tired. I will love you like a dog until the day you put me down, you know? This one girl shared a bunch of her notes app poetry, and I think that these perfectly demonstrate like the type of thing I am talking about here. The people who tried to bury you have no clue that you were a seed. Grow. Why does this time hurt so bad? What makes you so different? Not my first rodeo. This is another trend, is that people will like, there'll be a title to the poem, which you see at the end. In fact, this is done all the time in Megan Fox's poetry collection. Hers are like, the devil wears Dolce, the art of becoming an accessory, leading a lamb to slaughter, I am Prince Charming. I think it can work sometimes, but because Megan Fox does it in every single poem in this collection, I think it sort of sometimes feels a little bit forced. Oh, this is so classic. Thank you for breaking my heart. My acting teacher says I'm exquisite. Like, they're all sort of regurgitations of the same kind of thing. Should we like try and use my English lit degree and my writing school experience to workshop one of these poems? This one says, I once thought that taking up running as a hobby would allow me to outrun my thoughts. What a childish thing to believe that something so futile could suppress the aching urge to just fucking rot. Here's the thing, I'm gonna go all Grammarly on this, because it makes sense, but it's wordy. So firstly, I would immediately swap what a childish thing to how naive. It's just more concise. It also brings in a midline rhyme. How naive to believe, you know? Which makes it feel a little bit more lyrical. How naive to believe, you know? It's more satisfying. I would also change aching urge to just the ache. It's a little verbose, the 2 words that sort of mean the same thing. Just feels sort of redundant. We also have the word run twice, which is my pet peeve when you have a same word repeated within one sentence. So I once thought that taking up running as a hobby would help me to outrun my thoughts. We need a synonym, babe. I would just immediately swap outrun for outpace. Like I would take up running to outpace my thoughts. Running and outpace just feels neater, I guess. I'd cut out as a hobby, it's unnecessary. I would change would allow me to just would help. In a poem, would allow me to, it's just too syllabic and you can say that more succinctly. So I guess then we would have, I once thought taking up running would help me outpace my thoughts. How naive to believe something so futile could suppress the ache to just fucking rot. You know, it's not great, but it's better. Now, some people have found huge success from this style of writing. Enter the final boss of this style of poetry, Rupi Kaur. She has kind of become the face of this style of poetry, I think.
I'm not the whiskey you want. When your fingers were dipped inside me, searching for honey that would not come for you.
Cynthia, Jesus died for our Cynthias. Jesus cried, runaway bride. Julia Roberts, Julia Rob Hurts. Cynthia, you are dead. You're dead. Bee-ba-boo.
They're pretty straightforward metaphors or observations about very complicated, difficult themes. Because she does write very accessible poems that can be understood and resonate with everyone. She's kind of like the Colleen Hoover of poetry, dare I say. And I think this just speaks to the fact that someone else being able to articulate thoughts that we all have is a gift. And it's something we kind of appreciate, you know, when someone can perfectly explain something you are going through, it's almost reassuring. It gives you something to cling on to. There's also even a book called Notes App Poetry. And then like I mentioned, we have the Megan Fox book, also Lily Reinhart's poetry collection really reminds me of this style. It seems to be our winter, so I'll try to make snow angels in your cigarette smoke. Just tell me more about the stars, my love. Allow me to lose myself in your constellations. Apologies are a band-aid. The wound is still there underneath, it still hurts. It just looks cleaner on the outside. It's that kind of thing. And then of course we have Gabby Hanna. This is adultolescence. I have to find this one poem which I think just sort of sums it up. Time is relative. Beauty is relative. Family is relatives. Do you see what I'm getting at? Another staple of these collections is they'll have a lot of kind of visual aids to help you kind of read through it. So there'll be lots of images, illustrations, diagrams, you know, maybe even speech bubbles, this kind of thing. That's a real common thread in these. In fact, it's actually kind of like flicking through your very own TikTok slideshow. I just realized that really is a common thread throughout all of these, the Rupi Kaur books. And you know, maybe Rupi Kaur kind of normalized this too, because she has these kind of illustrations throughout her work. Lily Reinhart too has, you know, there's a lot of color, there's little doodles in here as well. Now, here's my point. I would say that although these poems are not technically brilliant, they're not, on a craft level, they are not literary. You're not gonna analyze these in school and kind of come up with your interpretations. They're pretty straightforward. But does that mean they are bad? No. Because they do resonate with people, and art can exist for multiple purposes. If you enjoy something on a subjective level, then it is good. And there is no shame in that. If something connects with you, if something is able to articulate your thoughts in an eloquent way, maybe you're struggling to put all of these big ideas into just one sentence or like a couple of sentences, a string of sentences, and then one of these poems does that for you, that's powerful. If you enjoy the poem, then that's great. I do just want to caveat this. I'm editing the video and realizing that I kind of didn't explain this dimension of it too. That what I mean by Notes App Poetry is not bad. I mean like as a form, as a medium, as a, like I don't think we can automatically dismiss something just because it's written in free verse. But can individual poems or collections still be available for criticism and critique and reviews? Yes, of course. So for me, the format, this style of what resembles Notes App Poetry is not inherently bad, but individual poems or individual collections are still very much susceptible for scrutiny and critique and analysis, because maybe you think that it's an incomplete metaphor, or it's too meandering, or the imagery it uses isn't consistent or doesn't work. You know, I think Notes App Poetry is still very much available for criticism. It's just that the form specifically is not inherently bad. That's what I was trying to say here, but I don't think I explained it in very good words. That's my self-critique. I will say I think there's no need to critique things that are just for pure self-expression, like something that you have just personally written in your own notes app, but the second something is made available for public consumption, so it's released in a collection, it's sold in bookstores, I think at that point we are entitled to review and to compare and contrast and think about the piece of art from an objective and subjective level, and we are allowed to critique. So yeah, even if some people do take it a little too far sometimes, like there are some YouTube creators who have made like 25 videos just about Gabbi Hanna. That's insane. That's actually just bullying. Maybe if you've made 25 videos about one person, you might be the problem. Let's not get into that. But I just wanted to clarify that. I hope that that makes sense. And I think we have to stop being such intellectual snobs about this kind of thing. It's not Milton, it's not Shakespeare, it's not Blake, it's not Keats, but it's not claiming to be. It's very much staying in its own lane. And if it explains something in the words you are struggling to find, then that's important and that means something. And that's the power of the written word. That's what all authors really are hoping to achieve, I think. And it means it has value, you know, and I kind of can't believe that I'm going to compare notes app poetry to religion, but bear with me. Religion and mythology exist to help us to understand a very confusing world, you know? Initially that was because we struggled to explain why trees existed or why the sun rises every morning. Especially in a time before science, we would wonder, why do plants lean towards the sun? Why do the tides work in the way that they do? And often people turn to mythology or religion to say there is some higher power controlling these things. And my point is, human beings have a fundamental desire to understand the things that are happening to them, the things that they are witnessing, the things they are seeing, and the things that they are experiencing. So if you go through a time of heartbreak, of tragedy, of loss, of longing, those are big emotions, those are difficult emotions, and they're often something that we go through alone. And it's really hard to truly explain to someone else what it feels like. And so someone else packaging all those feelings up into one neat little metaphor or simile or analogy or poem, that means something. And so we turn to it because we almost appreciate that artist for being able to put our big thoughts into little, well-packaged words. So if you enjoy it and your experience with the art is enjoyable, then the art has value. And that's the simplicity of it. And so for me, that's why I think this poetry does have value. It does. I don't know. Let people express themselves, man. just let people have fun with the written word. And look, since I'm sharing other people's poetry, I'm gonna make myself vulnerable and like have a scroll through my notes app and see what the first thing I can find is. Oh yeah, here we go. This is one I wrote that's called "That Love Was Like a Mosquito." That love was like a mosquito landing on a baby doll, looking for a place to plunge its pincers, a place to pierce the veil of skin, of flesh, of something nourishing, but finding only plastic. So the idea behind this one, this piece that I can see was written, oh yeah, at 3:42 AM. I think the idea behind this metaphor was that the mosquito is the person looking for love, and the baby doll is something that seems to resemble it on surface value. You know, you see this thing that looks like everything you want, but then when you actually sink your teeth into it, you realize it was all a lie, it was all a facade, it's not the real thing, it's plastic, not flesh. So I think the idea was that this is someone who you kind of think you can love and you put your energy into, only to realize they're maybe not capable of giving it to you back. They're maybe not able to supply what you need, and maybe it was all fake. Maybe that's what plastic kind of has the connotations of too. I definitely think of love as being something that is nourishing, is good for your soul, is kind of energizing, so contrasting that with the plastic, the hard exterior of something else that isn't true, isn't authentic, isn't genuine. I guess that was the idea. So there's my notes app poetry. Like, I don't want to suggest for a single second that I am above this. I'm very much down with this. Thank you so much for watching this video. You can subscribe if you're new, follow me on TikTok, on Instagram, and I will see you very, very soon with another video. Bye-bye!